Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti. I am MrPhotographer.com. This video is meant for those of you that are very new to digital photography. You've been taking images for just maybe 3 months or less, and you're just starting to get into processing those images on your computer. And it really doesn't matter what application you're using. I want to talk about 3 mistakes that I find beginning photographers make in post-production pretty much all the time. These are mistakes that, like a year from now, when you look back at those images, you're going to think, wow, what was I thinking? Because these mistakes will be very obvious once you get just a little bit of experience. Now, I'm going to be demoing it in Lightroom, but as I alluded, it doesn't matter what application you're using. These mistakes are kind of universal to the new photographer. First of all, you have an image and you have this new camera and it's like, this wonder of technology, and you want to show off just how sharp it is, right? So you'll have an image like this that has a lot of texture in it. And what I find is happening is many times these newer photographers, they just like pile on any slider that will make it look sharper. In Lightroom, that includes clarity and texture, and of course in the detail tab, it includes the sharpening slider. And they're just like looking at how sharp it is and thinking, wow, that is incredible. But the problem is it's too sharp. It just doesn't look realistic. So be aware of this. This is a common mistake, probably the most common mistake I see from newer photographers that are just starting out. You'll tend to overdo anything that will make the image look really sharp. So just kind of back those things down. And again, this is something that I think a year from now, if you look back on that image, you're going to say, wow, what was I thinking? So be careful about sharpening. That's number one. The second thing I want to talk about is saturation. I think maybe because our eyes aren't quite trained yet on how to actually look at a photograph, we tend to oversaturate color images. It's common with every image, but it may be more common with an image such as this that doesn't have a lot of color in it. It's just predominantly blue or blue cooler colors, a little bit of warmer colors in there. But what will happen is many times a photographer will get in there and they're just going to crank the saturation. They're going to, wow, look how warm and golden that looks. And the blues look great. And the seagull even has some warm colors on it. And then again, a year from now, you're going to look back on that and go, wow, that is just crazy. So be careful with vibrance and saturation, and it includes any adjustments you may do in the HSL color tab in Lightroom as well. But again, it just isn't limited to Lightroom. People make this mistake in any application they're using. Now, there may be an artistic reason why you want to oversaturate an image, or there may be just a professional reason why you may want to oversaturate an image. For example, a few years ago, I shot this cover for this magazine, and as I remember, the editor said, I want a picture. This is called Canal Side, this area here. I want a picture of Canal Side, and I want it Disneyland colorful. She wanted it over the top colorful. So I took this shot and I tone mapped it. So it was like super, super colorful, what she wanted. And she was thrilled. Personally, I don't like the image at all. It's just a little bit too colorful. But there may be a reason why, you may want to have an image that is like super colorful. But most often for just images you're going to be sharing or printing to hang on a wall, you don't want to do that, all right? Now, the third and final thing that I see new photographers often do is they don't straighten their images. They're crooked. Sometimes it's just subtle, like this image here. This is more prevalent, actually, what I found, is if you look through the viewfinder with your left eye, like I do. Left-eyed, people who are left-eye dominant, because they have to look through the viewfinder with their left eye, their nose kind of gets in the way of the camera, and they tend to tilt their head. so their eye could look through the viewfinder properly. And in doing so, they often will have an image that is rather crooked. Now, there's no excuse for me to have a crooked image because the cameras that I've been using lately have like levels right in the viewfinder. So I should be able to shoot a straight image, but apparently I wasn't able to here. You could see that it's sloping from left to right downward. So just go to whatever app you're using, go usually to the crop tool. And in the case of Lightroom, you could click the little auto button and hopefully it will straighten it. And it straightened it a little, but not enough. Also, if you just click down, you see you get that tight grid. And I could make sure those verticals where those windmills are nice and straight, and the horizon is nice and straight. So I could straighten the image. You could see as I straighten it now, it was considerably crooked. But now it's a lot straighter. And I must have been, I shot on the same day. And you can see that one too is very crooked. So we go to the crop tool and just straighten it. So just make sure you straighten your images. I go on Instagram and Flickr, and it's all too often I see like oceans draining off on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, or lakes that are draining away, or, light poles and things that are just tipped over, and it's obvious that they weren't crooked, really. So those three things. Sharpening, just dial back your sharpening. You're just going to overdo it at first without really realizing it. Also, saturation and vibrance, dial that back as well, because you're going to tend to overdo that. And finally, just make sure your images are nice and straight. Unless, again, you may be going for some type of artistic look where you want a crooked. Gary Winogrand, a famous street photographer, was kind of known for having crooked street images. If you're going for that, by all means, do it. Don't stifle yourself in a creative way because you're trying to conform yourself to a norm. But generally speaking, if you're just going to be taking, especially landscape images, to hang on a wall or share online, you're going to want those to be straight. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.